My name is Optimus Prime. We are autonomous robotic organisms, but you can call us Autobots.
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
I want you to rest well, and a month from now, this Hollywood big shot's gonna give you what you want. I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Inside Your Screen podcast. This is the Killing Eve podcast, where myself and my fellow host, Brendan Horgan, are talking all things Villanelle and Eve. Hello, Brendan. How are you doing? Are you good, sir?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. Have you been enjoying this bank holiday weekend?
Yeah, it's been a quiet, isolated one, but the weather was nice. I've got a garden, so I'm lucky. I was able.
You didn't go down to Brighton Beach and
No, I'm not stupid. So, and I'm not Dominic Cummings, so I'm not allowed. So.
That's a whole podcast in itself. We won't get into that. We're not going to get into the politics. Yeah. We're here to talk about all things Villanelle and Eve. So, the penultimate episode, Beautiful Monster. Yes, we find ourselves with a few more tidbits of information, but on the whole, another episode where, do you think much happens, Brendan? Do you think much is going on?
Yeah, I thought quite a bit happened in this episode, to be fair. I think our prediction of them rushing it through now and trying to get the story moving is happening. So
It's a little too late, though.
It's rushed, isn't it?
Yeah, when you have 8 episodes and the first 3 or 4 have been sort of filler in my risk. I'm getting to a kind of point now where this is the penultimate episode. This is the episode before the last in the series. And all I feel now is that really this whole series has been a lead up to series 4. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
And I think series 4 will be more about the 12 and everything like that. But before we get into that, let's just do a recap on the general episode as such. So we start off with Villanelle. She's meeting the elusive Helena. Once
I
again,
like.
Yeah, I think she's going to be a character in the next series that's going to have a bit more force. She's a force to be reckoned with. She was very mysterious this whole season. She turned up, not the last episode, the last episode before, to Dascha and said, get Villanelle in check and everything like that. And now she's becoming a bit more prominent. But once again, it's a bit too late in the day to kind of introduce a new character who's the big bad, if you will, I think.
Yeah, what I thought about that opening scene was, which I thought was a negative and kind of, odd. But she was odd. The scene wasn't that odd, but I liked the oddness of her character. I liked the whole kind of going over and hugging and kind of embracing Villanelle and kissing her on the head. And there was a great line, I think, at the end of the scene where Villanelle says something along the lines of "Thanks for the inappropriate touching."
Yeah, it's interesting. That whole scene is interesting in respect because I kind of thought this kind of 12 board member, if you will, let's just call her a board member. I don't know where she is in the hierarchy of the 12, but she seems to be playing with Villanelle's emotions in the respect that you get the kind of sense that she knows that she's killed her mother. You get the sense that she's been abandoned by everyone, and this is, in my opinion, this whole season hasn't really been about anyone apart from Villanelle. Villanelle's mental state, the way that she's kind of off her game at the moment, the way that she's been abandoned by everyone and everything, I think is leading up to something, but we'll get into that in a second. But the point, where she kind of brings her into a kind of embrace, and there's a kind of tense moment there where you kind of think, is she going to try and snap her neck, or is she just going to bring her into her bosom? But then when she says do you know why I love you, Villanelle, because you're an agent of chaos, it kind of, to me, kind of seems like this woman is a very business-like headed woman, and she's just manipulating Villanelle to do what she kind of wants, and she's trying to give her this kind of false sort of confirmation or affirmation, if you will. Yes, you're loved, don't worry. That's my take from it.
What I enjoyed about that scene, and her more importantly, was she came across pretty badass. And I liked that. I like the fact, if I'm honest, the introduction, we hadn't seen much of her up until this point, and her first introduction to Villanelle was very much, she came across almost like you said, the businesswoman of it, almost like she isn't part of the kind of violence, she's just almost like a middleman, a kind of passer on of information, the kind of the business side of it. But in this, you've got the distinct opposite of that, where she obviously is quite, you know, I like the bit where she basically said, I can, you know, I could kill you. To her.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Well, I think
she
it's
didn't come across
interesting as well.
as assassin-esque, which
No.
now she's
Well, no, she doesn't need
suggesting
like
she
that's
is.
yeah, that's the whole point, because there's a new character that's introduced in this scene as well, Rian, who's a silent presence in the meeting the whole way through, and something that I saw straight away was that the actress who plays her is Alexandra Roach, who's Becky in Utopia. I don't know if you've ever seen like Dennis Kelly's Utopia. It's a fantastic TV show. She's a Welsh girl. Yeah, so you know the Welsh one who the Welsh girl who basically tries to she gets involved with the whole lost manuscript. She's the new assassin, and I think the subtext behind this scene is that Helena's like, you know, here's a new assassin, like you're replaceable.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's that kind of subtext going on. It's like, you've kind of messed up a bit, Villanelle. Like, you know, here's my new protege sort of thing. And once again, we'll get into that later on as well, because like she only has like 2 scenes in this episode, and she's silent. She doesn't. I don't think she utters a word really.
She doesn't
at all. But the kind of the intention is there, and you know, poor Mo. But we'll get to that momentarily. So Villanelle has this meeting, and I love the little, once again, these little Killing Eve sort of nuances where she's like, I think I'm going to kill you with that little chair. And then the camera pans in this grand room of like, you know, swords and armor and this throne room. And you get this tiny little chair, and then you just kind of say, I just thought that's brilliant. That's the kind of humor of Killing Eve that I've always loved. And it still has those moments. And
it's the little moments where she's like, take a seat, and she starts edging towards that. And she's like, not that seat.
Yeah. It's those little interactions that make Killing Eve what made me love Killing Eve from the first series. So we kind of then go on, once again, there's so many little strings of plots going on. So you have Eve, who's like, you know, she's still a bit of pill, and she's kind of putting the clues together, and she goes off to find out to Scotland and whatnot. Then you've got the other thing.
You're missing
Gerald. I'm not missing. You're
brushing over a lot of stuff.
I'm brushing over a lot of stuff because of the fact that it just seems so directionless. This is my whole point. This whole series has been very directionless, and I don't know if that's a kind of case of like the writers just trying to cram in so much stuff. There's a lot of stuff in this that you kind of feel, we've talked about it before in previous episodes, where I feel that there's been a lot going on off screen, off camera, that you kind of have to fill in yourself, but also at the same time, that doesn't really work. Mo in particular, like the last episode, Mo wasn't there at all. So you kind of get the impression that he's been going off doing his own investigative work, and we see that with Carolyn when he meets.
But your argument is flawed. Like, just that's a great example. You said the last episode we were like, "Where's Mo? Mo's not in it," and they answered that question in this episode.
But
they did. He's been following.
Right, but I want to
that's
see.
That's where he's been. No, but yeah, I agree with you. Like, and I'll give you a better example, because that example was poor. Because they did. That was for me. That was like, right. There's Tony's question. As the minute that the scene of at breakfast in the restaurant, and you see Mo, I was like, and he's like, right. Here's the file on Pierce, or I don't know his name. Do you know the character's name? But the Stephen.
I don't know his name off the top of my head. But the Stephen Pemberton character, the MI6.
So he says, "Here's the file on the evidence I've gathered on him." Thank you. You've answered my question as to where was Mo in the last episode. He was working undercover trying to get information on this guy. Now, a really big flaw in regards to fill in the gaps, because in this episode was once again, at the end of the last episode, we wanted to see that conversation between Carolyn and Geraldine, and clearly that conversation didn't take place, and because the scenes between Geraldine and Konstantin, and Geraldine and Carolyn, would suggest that this big plot point on the last episode, which was almost like this cliffhanger of what's going on between you and Konstantin, wasn't covered. Mm-hmm. They didn't have that conversation. And, you know, she turns up at Konstantin's kind of, you know...
But that's my point, like you were saying about...
so that's a better example of something that they didn't explain. It was a bit confusing in this episode as well, because it's almost like that conversation just didn't happen, and that whole...
Well, this is my point. There's a lot. I mean, you've said in previous episodes that you're not really a big fan of the whole jumping around, like the times sort of scenes. The last episode ended with Carolyn and Geraldine about to kind of have dinner, and you kind of felt that there was going to be like this monumental conversation that they were going to have. Yeah. And for all wants and reasons, whether that happened or not, we're not privy to that information. The viewer, the audience, are not privy to that information until later on. Yeah, where Caroline turns up at Konstantin's house, where he has another kind of, oh, woo, someone's in the dark. You know, once again foreshadowing the kind of heart attack that he's going to have.
Which also kind of, it does, I think your theory of Geraldine being involved is completely out the window now. She obviously did just...
I think it may be, yeah.
It was the case of she was after Konstantin's kind of... But obviously he's used her, and he admitted that in the episode.
But that, once again, that whole subplot just doesn't seem to work well. Like, the whole thing of, like... them having a kind of a relationship or something out off the screen that the viewer's not really aware of until this, like, that little moment where she turns around to him and says, like, oh, you used me, and he was like, yes, I'm there to spy on your mum. Yeah. And she kind of just walks off. It just felt a bit flat for me. There just seems to be a lot of those kind of instances where there's a lot happening off screen, or there's a lot happening between the panels where the audience has to kind of connect the dots. And listen, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. When writing is done well, and when episodes are done well, that, you know, you automatically connect the dots. You don't need to kind of have your hand held to do that. It works well. This, in the whole series, has been very disjointed in that respect. And I kind of feel like you're kind of like sitting there going, hang on, and then 20 minutes later another scene happens, you're like, oh, so that happened because of this. It's more kind of like a narrative structure that's been a deconstructed narrative structure that makes you kind of question your own self. Because listen, audiences that watch Killing Eve aren't stupid people. People that watch it are like, they want to be intrigued by the espionage of, like, the spy thing. They want to be surprised by certain things that happens. But there was this episode once again reinforced the whole thing. Like Nico, for example, when Nico got a pitchfork in his throat, and you were like, he could be alive, and I was like, he's dead, mate. He's brown bread. He's done for. And then he appears. The same thing happens in this episode with two characters.
Here's a question before you go any further.
Yeah.
When we saw Dascha lying dead on the floor, and when we saw Konstantin lying dead, did you genuinely think either of them were dead? I'm not trying to... Again, I didn't think for a second either of them were dead.
No. I agree. But then that, all right, let's focus on Dascha for one instance. So let's rewind a little bit.
Great Scottish accent, by the way. Dascha can pull off the Scottish accent.
They both can. Jodie Comer, they can both do. Like, Jodie Comer is, like, one of her amazing traits is being able to do any accent flawlessly, and through the whole Killing Eve. So far, yeah.
Has she done Irish yet?
Don't think so. That could be in series 4. But so what basically happens is that Elena, through the subtext of saying, hey, I've got this new assassin, look at this new protege, Villanelle turns around and says, oh, give me a job, let me prove myself to you. She gets teamed up with Dascha, and they go to Scotland. And we're not really given much information about the target. He's an American golfer. That's all I knew about it. I don't know if there was more information that I just missed.
No, I don't think I think on most occasions like this, the actual target is just that, a target.
And there's a point where, Villanelle and Dascha are playing like the kind of damsels in distress, where they've lost the ball in the woodland area. They call over the American guy and ask him to go into the woods to...
Who, slight flaw here, but who conveniently is the only one who gets out and stops.
Yeah, they're in
there was actually four of them.
Hey, you guys carry on.
Hi guys, and he's like, you guys go away and leave the area, please, while I deal with these ladies.
You kind of have to take it with a pinch of salt, I guess, in that respect, for the hits to work in that respect. So he goes in, and they're having a discussion about who's going to kill him. This is Dasha's like last job before she can go home. And there's a bit of an antagonistic scene beforehand where she's in a lift with Villanelle, and she basically says she's reinforcing the fact that Villanelle has no one. So she goes, "Oh, I have a son," and then she goes, "Oh, you didn't know I had a son, eh? Well, yeah, I'm going to go to Moscow. I'm going to go back to Russia. I'm going to have my feet up. I'm going to drink some vodka. I'm going to be with my son, and I'm going to die happy. You're going to die with no one." So just reinforcing that whole thing that Villanelle really has no one at all. So they're in the woods, and Villanelle has a golf club. She's about to swing down at the American, but then she makes a choice, I guess, and she smashes Dascha in the back of the head or whatever, and she leaves her there. Now, this was my kind of, I was sitting there going, okay, this is an odd choice, because the Villanelle that we've known thus far would not let anyone escape. She basically lets the American go free. She shows mercy in that respect. She lets him go free, but she also doesn't really finish off the job with Dascha. She just walks off. Now, I want to know your thoughts, Brendan, about that. Like, do you think she consciously left her alive to prove a point, to send a message? Or do you think she felt like she killed her and she just walked off, kind of thing?
No, I think it's neither. I think since it's been very clear since she basically killed her mum, that she is kind of, and it was made very clear in the last episode, she's had enough. She's kind of having a kind of midlife, like you've mentioned a few times, whether we wouldn't call it, she's still quite young, so we wouldn't call it a midlife crisis, but she's having an assassin crisis. She's having an assassin crisis of the mind, and exactly that. Dascha has questioned, that there's been those digs there where, she's got this weird relationship with Eve. She's got this weird relationship with Dascha, or kind of almost like what's the word I'm looking for? What is the word I'm looking for?
Well, the relationship between Villanelle and Dascha.
It's almost like a competition between the two.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Like
to an extent,
at the very beginning, there was this paternal sort of like relationship that you kind of felt, because Dascha was the older assassin who was taking her under a wing. You kind of did feel like she was, I don't know, like.
There is that slight paternal thing, but they still are at each other. They're almost like enemies, but they're not. They're kind of like
frenemies.
Yeah, frenemies. That's a good. That works, frenemies, right?
Frenemies,
Dascha was brutal to her in that scene in the lift. So she's kind of she's having this breakdown almost. She doesn't know what she wants to do. She knows she doesn't really want to be an assassin. She's in love with Eve. She's just killed her parents. She's having a bit of a breakdown, and I think that is more. It wasn't she thought Dascha was dead, or she thought I'm just going to leave her alive. It was more she's making mistakes. She's being sloppy. Like you said, she let the American go away. She would never do that. So it's almost like it is a breakdown. She's not thinking logically. She's not.
So you think she's just been sloppy, that A, she let the American escape, and B, that she didn't kill Dascha?
She's that, and they allude to the whole the wound on her arm as well. They had that both with Dascha and with Helena. She's not herself. She's not 100%. She's not acting correctly, and it is because it seems she's having a mini breakdown. She's having an assassin crisis.
I love films that have like a hitman that has a kind of conscious, or like
it's intriguing.
Grosse Point Blank is like one of the best sort of hitman that goes back to his hometown, and is kind of done with everything. It gets a bit apathetic about. I love those kind of like films or TV shows or anything like that. And I feel like this is.
I would say this is more. It adds to the element of you really can't guess what she's going to do next.
Yeah. So let's move on to let's go with Konstantin, because we have a scene here where obviously with the last episode, Irina, his daughter, just mowed over and then crunched beneath the wheels her mother's boyfriend, and now we find her in a detention center in Moscow. I'm going to be honest, I kind of found this whole scene a bit pointless. Only because of the fact that I don't see where this is going. No. If they wanted to bring Irina more into the forefront with Konstantin to kind of show him that he has things to lose. We found that out in the last series where, you know, he had to choose between his family or Villanelle. In this series, it seems to be that, you know, I said in the last episode, I said like it kind of came out of nowhere that she just ran down the mother's boyfriend, and now she's in a detention center. And there's this whole like scene where Konstantin just basically says, you know, I've got so many plates, you know, that I'm juggling so many balls and everything like that, and you're just being a hindrance. I don't really see where this is going.
Totally.
I don't understand why.
I found it really weird, right? And can I be honest with you? In that scene, as I watched it, is it Irina? I totally sympathise with Konstantin, if I'm honest. Like, and you know, everything he said about her throughout the series is she's fucking annoying, man. She's really fucking annoying. And I genuinely thought in that scene, like, it's a weird one, the way they're trying to perceive her. So you had the scene with Konstantin speaking to the doctor, and the doctor said basically she's an extremely intelligent young lady and she's a bit of a psychopath. Basically, she is dangerous, manipulative, XYZ. But then you had the moment where he was kind of like, I'm leaving you here, and she was like acting the big I am of, oh, you're overacting, Dad, you need to, you know, play it down a little bit, and and it's kind of like, no, I'm leaving you here. And I was really hoping it was going to be Konstantin basically going, you fucked up, you're on your own. But he plays the whole, I'll be back in 2 days.
But here's the thing I don't really understand.
What I found stupid, which didn't make sense about that, was she's supposed to be this really intelligent one. And when he says, I'm leaving you here, it's like, what does she genuinely think he's going to do? Like, yeah, you've just attempted murder, and when you've been interviewed by the psychiatrist in this child prison, you've said, yeah, I'd reverse over him. And you think I'm gonna, like, it kind of clashes with this perception of her being really intelligent, where it was just like, no, you're really stupid.
But I mean,
much in agreement with what Konstantin says.
Yeah, but even before that, this is what doesn't make sense to me.
Called Irina. Fucking stupid.
Yeah, but this is the thing that doesn't make sense to me. So in the last episode, in the closing moments of episode 6, he's there waiting for her with his like bags. They're ready to leave, right? They're ready to go to Cuba, and she mows down her mother's boyfriend. Okay, fair enough, whatever. Now we cut, once again, this is going back to previously what I was talking about with the kind of what happens in between the panels. Now we find her in a detention center. So what? Did he like call the cops and like give her over? Did, you know, like how,
very valid questions.
Yeah, like how did she, because he bribes the psychiatrist or whatever, like you were talking about before, like he bribes her to say like, oh, can you release her? And he's like, no. So you got to think, like, it wasn't Konstantin then that put her in a situation. So what happened in between the panels to get to the point where she's now here? I just kind of felt like it was a writer's way of like going, oh, we want her out of the way now. She's not going to be in harm's way or anything like that. We need a reason for Konstantin to stay where he is. Therefore, we're just going to have this scene at the end where she just mows down this guy for no reason at all. And that's,
do you know what I think?
Sloppy. I find that a bit sloppy.
It is, but and this will be, and maybe I'm being a little bit too friendly now on the show in regards to almost defending it. This series, if we're being blunt and we're looking at the overall arc, is that the correct term? The arc of this series.
Yeah.
It's what, if we're looking at it overall, it's what has Konstantin been up to?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we've got Who Killed Kenny, the 12, but that isn't the real arching storyline of series 3. The real arching storyline has been, what the hell is Konstantin up to? What's his game? Why is he spying on Carolyn? Why is he doing that? What's he doing working with, the other MI6 guy? What's his dealings with him? What's he been up to with the money of this 12? Is he trying to escape? And exactly that. What the hell is going on with his daughter in a detention center? I've got a funny feeling in the last episode, an awful lot of the questions that will be answered will be in regards to Konstantin, his plans, what he's been up to. I'm not sure they will reveal why the hell his daughter is in prison, because we're filling in those blanks, but I'm looking at it going, I'm guessing Konstantin put her in there and called the police.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the whole thing. Like, you said it there, like, there's so many threads that need to be resolved by this last episode, which I don't think is going to happen. We talked about this previously, that I know I'm going to be dissatisfied with the ending of the next episode, regardless of what may come. I have my predictions of what I think is going to happen, but we'll get into that in a second. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Konstantin, I get the feeling that he's been playing the kind of, the Clint Eastwood sort of figure in where he's been playing off the two kind of factions, where he's been playing off MI6 with the 12, and he's out for himself. He's inadvertently or, by purpose has come across this money. He's been skimming off, and he's got the hard drive or whatever it may be. Like, that's the thing as well. At the end of the episode, Villanelle sort of turns to him in the Liverpool Street station and says, like, "Oh, give me where's the money?" And there's like a slip of paper that gets handed. We don't know where this money is. We don't know that's all about. Really, that
was just for specifics. That was still in Scotland.
Oh, sorry, that was in Scotland.
Yeah.
I thought it was Liverpool Street station.
No, that's the other end of the train.
I see. Okay. But, I mean, regardless, yeah, Konstantin's story has been a bit, once again, disjointed. And this is how I would sum up the whole series in general. Who's he playing for? Who's he playing with? We don't really know. We can assume certain things, and from his actions, we can sort of tell that he's on the run now and everything like that. Exactly. But also at the same time, this is why I was trying to, the whole thing with Geraldine, like, that's why I thought, like, she may be working under him, because of the fact that why would he be paying her attention? And that scene specifically with the kind of the steak and like thing, having that kind of confrontation about, oh, you just using me, and he was like, yes, I'm a shit, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, fine, that was it then. So why did it have to be so prolonged? Like, why did all that stuff have to be, I don't know. Yeah, it's just, I'm feeling very much, I'm trying to defend stuff, but
you're not happy.
I'm not happy, man. I'm not happy.
Oh.
There's just a lot of stuff that's been, there are certain, you watch a TV show and like, this is 8 episodes now. Like, by this episode, I should be on my at the edge of my seat. You know what I mean? I should be sitting there going, oh my God. And all they've got to offer us is a kind of really out left field kill who is Mo. And then you have the kind of whole fake deaths with Dascha and Konstantin. And it's like, we've seen this before now with Nico. And like, all right, you had the kind of, I think I said in the first episode, like the shock death of Kenny. And I didn't want to kind of really think about this, but I was thinking season 3 is going to be a lot like this. There's going to be a lot of like shock deaths, or a lot of like, did you ever watch The Walking Dead with Glenn, and how the kind of the fake out where you thought he died, but now he fell under a trash.
But there might be listeners who have never watched The Walking Dead, Tony.
Okay, well, spoiler alert, it's about 5 years now. So, hey. You think Glenn's going to die, but he doesn't. It's the whole JR thing, where everything's a dream, all that kind of stuff. They're using it too much now. Like when you have a horror movie and you have like a good jump scare moment, it's like you can only use those maybe once, twice, 3 times maximum before the audience becomes desensitized to stuff. I feel that Killing Eve is doing that with the deaths, or the fake deaths. And it's like, oh, we fake death Nico, we fake death Dascha, we fake death Konstantin. How many more fake deaths can we do now before it's like, do I care anymore?
Yeah, but do you want see, because I thought your issue was with the concept of the shock death. So
well,
you
I
don't like
think
them using shock deaths, but you also don't like it when they don't use shock deaths, because all those guys, like, you can say fake deaths, but none, you could discard just the concept of death because they're all alive. They never showed you any of those.
I think it's more the
They
kind
never
of case
showed you
of
any of those people dead as an. Like, again, all of those I think were quite predictable. I think we both said they're all quite predictable. So you can't have that. This is just my opinion. Obviously, you can't compare. Like, say, I really hate the shock. Them trying to use the whole shock of, like, oh, they've killed off a main character, and then go, I really hate. Well, you can, of course, you can. It's your opinion, but it's almost like they're contradicting each other. But because you're then saying, I don't like when they don't kill off or fake shock kill. So it's like, where does your kind of edge of the seat gotta tune in next week? What's happened? What's going to happen? Where does it come from? Unless you, especially in an assassin kind of assassination drama, where do your kind of come from?
I think it's more the kind of case of with the kind of hits that all the deaths that have happened in this series. Since Kenny, there's been Felix, who died on the job, the older lady in Poland, Villanelle's family, and Mo. And Mo's death was so unceremoniously completed, actioned, if you will, that it kind of, like, I like the character of Mo, the kind of banter that he had between him and Carolyn. I thought was really good, and I kind of felt like this was a kind of character that could, start getting legs, if you will, if they gave him more screen time.
Can I be honest with you about Mo specifically?
Sure.
I thought that the way Mo was portrayed throughout the season, from the first time we saw him to his death, was perfection. He was supposed to be an insignificant character. The final scene we see with him and Carolyn is her going, "You're crap. You're not good enough.
You don't have your omelette. No more omelette for you.
You're not having your omelette. Now, can you go out and do what I actually told you to do? You're insignificant, and what you've done is insignificant. Go away from me." He wasn't in the last episode, and we on purpose, because it made us as viewers go, "Where's Mo?" Even though it wasn't a major issue, but it was like, "Where's Mo gone?" All the previous episodes he was in, he was always basically a hindrance. Mo, do this for me if you're not doing it for me. And that was exactly how they portrayed his death. They didn't show it because it's insignificant. He just was lying at the end of the pond in the exact same way when Carolyn found out about it, and we have that scene with Geraldine where she's like, what's happened? And it's like, oh, it sounds like someone's died. Well, it's fine. It was just a member of the public. They knew what they were signing up to. So it was kind of like the portrayal of Mo from the very first time we saw him till his death was this kind of insignificant kind of character. And it was portrayed from start to finish, even in his death, which I loved that. I thought that was really well done.
Okay, well, I don't know. I kind of feel, Killing Eve has always been a very female-driven sort of storyline, in terms of, like, you have a lot of strong kind of characters here, a lot of vulnerable kind of characters.
The show is really about, our two main antagonists. The show is about two women. It's their story, of course.
But do you think now, like, the male count, apart from Konstantin, who's been in this, who's probably the only male character that's been in through all three series that hasn't died or hasn't, he's been shot, I believe, and he's had a heart attack now and whatnot. But there just seems to be, like, all the women either seem to be manipulative or, psychopaths, and we even see Eve now, like, this whole
let's get to the end. Yeah, let's get to the scene, the Dascha scene with Eve.
Yeah, so Eve, I might have drifted off at this point, but she finds the whole birthday cake left a bit of pill. That's the receipt, and
we don't need to talk about that. We know.
Okay, no. I was just basically explaining how she gets to Scotland.
In essence, does Eve think she's already killed her? Does she think she's dead?
Who?
Or does Dascha? Are you completely forgetting the scene where Eve puts her foot on Dasha's chest and
No, that's
starts?
what I was getting to. I was just explaining
Okay.
how I was just
This is a
trying to
spoiler
explain how
review.
we got to there. All right, don't worry
Everyone
about it.
knows how
Okay,
we
all right.
got
So
there, man.
Eve gets to Scotland. She finds Dasha, who's lying down on the floor, having the golf club smashed a blunt force trauma on her head. And Dasha turns around and says, along the lines of such a luscious like mustache, just like Stalin. Obviously, because she put the pitchfork in Nico, and then Eve has this kind of really great sort of scene here where she just basically puts her foot on Dasha's chest and just starts putting pressure down, and there's this vulpine sort of sneer of hatred on her face that I just loved.
She's trying to kill Dasha.
And yeah, and like you can hear, I'm pretty sure there's like sirens going off in the distance. You can hear cracks of ribs going on.
Yeah.
This really satisfying sound of bone breaking, and that sounds weird, but when you see it, like it does really. And she's feeling its satisfaction as well.
So did Eve try and kill her? Or was Eve trying to kill her, and did Eve only not kill her because the sirens distracted her and made her get away?
Well, this is where I feel where season 4 is going to go. This is my prediction. Okay, I'm going to say this
is going to be covered in the final episode of the season.
No, I think what's going to happen is that Eve and Villanelle are going to team up, and if I have this all right, I tell you what, I have these like 3 levels of what I would like to happen. The top level would be Carolyn, Eve, and Villanelle teaming up, like some kind of
what world?
Hang on. Just like some kind of like
you
Avengers.
Realize that they're completely hinting on Eve has now gone full psycho. Yeah, they're not. Eve isn't the good guy in this scenario anymore.
Yeah, that's my point.
So
her and Villanelle would team up
with Carolyn.
Yeah, as the mastermind. How brilliant would that be? They're going to be like their own X-Force team, you know what I mean? Or Justice League Dark, sort of. You know, they're going to be like the Dark Avengers in that respect. That would be my utmost hope. I know it's not going to happen, but one can hope. My second thing is like the dynamic shifting. This whole series has really been about Villanelle and her kind of the way that she's basically not happy with who she is at the moment and who she wants to be.
And it's been exactly the same story for Eve. Your disregard, like this series has not just been a Villanelle story. It hasn't.
I disagree. I'll be honest with you. I think this whole series has been, the main backbone has been about Villanelle's emotional output, essentially, and like how she wants to be portrayed. Like the first 2 series, she kills people willy-nilly, and even in this series she kills people willy-nilly, but it was very poignant in the last episode where she turned around and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. She doesn't want to kill people anymore. But now we've got Eve, who is like this juxtaposition between the two, where Eve got her little, when she killed Raymond in series 2 of The Axe, and now she's kind of put her foot down on Dasha's chest. I would like to think anyway that there's going to be like a role reversal, that Villanelle will become the kind of like, the sort of sane one who won't kill willy-nilly, and Eve will start to become this kind of dark character. I know it's very kind of out there kind of opinion. However, I'd love if that happened. I would. If I'm honest, I would. I'd love for that to happen, but I can't see a full role reversal. I'm not saying role reversal. Of course, there's going to be hurdles along the way. There's going to be, but I think personally, where this is going is that Villanelle's gone off to find the money.
Right,
we don't know.
Yeah, stop for a second.
Yeah.
I do apologise for stopping you. Right, I know what we'd love to see. Let's kind of finish it up now, and we'll both do. It's the final episode. So, what are your predictions of what you think will actually happen, not what you want to happen?
Yeah. What I think will actually happen.
Final episode. What happens, and how does the series end?
I think it's going to be a complete setup for series 4. I don't think there's going to be. So Dasha and Konstantin are in the hospital together. I think through some kind of weird thing, they'll team up in a way to find Villanelle. I think it's going to all come to wherever this money is.
Do you think Kid and Eve is just going to turn into this massive, like almost like wrestling tag team competition,
like a Royal Rumble? Yeah, maybe.
Villanelle teaming up with Eve.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think it's wherever this money is based, wherever this money is. That's what this is all being leading to in terms of like, where's the money? Where's the missing money? Because the 12 are going to be there.
Where's my money?
Villanelle's gone off to get there now. Konstantin wants to get there. Everyone wants to get to this like MacGuffin, this money MacGuffin, right? So wherever this may be based, we don't know yet. The audience doesn't know where this is. So it's going to be a location where all these forces are going to come together. So what you're going to get is you're going to get Carolyn, who's been investigating her son's death, as well as Mo's death now. Then you've got the 12 who want the money because it's been taken from them. You've got Villanelle who wants the money to escape. You want Konstantin who wants the money to escape. You've got Eve who wants to follow Villanelle. They're all going to come to this like crescendo. It's going to come to this point, this place. And there's going to be some kind of standoff, or there's going to be some kind of some weird Mexican standoff thing. I think what's going to happen. These people. Yeah, all these people. I think essentially, not in one room, but like I think Eve and Villanelle. Eve will basically, because there was that whole point at the very end where Villanelle's been left by everyone. She's been abandoned by everyone in this series, and that's what they've made abundantly clear. That her family have left her, and she had to kill her mother, all that kind of stuff. Even Konstantin's or she felt was dying on her. She's all alone in the world. So who's going to turn to Eve? And but exactly, so they're going to find each other. World as well. They're going to become these two forces that, through whatever weirdness,
what happens in the last episode, they're going to become these two forces.
Yeah, I think so. They're going to combine forces to take out the 12.
I'm just Googling it. Is the last episode like 4 hours long or something, Tony?
Yeah, I don't know.
Remember, it's not going to be a satisfying end. 40 minutes. Right. Yours is too long. Right. Do you want to know what's actually going to happen in the final?
No, what's actually going to happen? You tell me, Bobby. You tell me what's actually going to happen.
My prediction is that the entire thing will be a timeline thing, the thing that I hate. We're going to have I think it might start with a conversation in the hospital between Dascha and Konstantin, right?
Yeah.
This is out of the side the box here, but the episode will be them two having a conversation, and the conversation is us seeing back flashes to the story that's been going on behind the background.
But they won't do backflash. No flashbacks. No flashbacks.
Yeah, there is 100% going to be flashbacks in this episode.
I disagree. When have they done flashbacks? They've never done flashbacks. Killing Eve is not a kind of series to do flashbacks, man.
What we're going to find out is, this series has had quite a lot of flashbacks, to be fair. That's how we were introduced.
What do you mean?
We were introduced to Dascha with a scene of her back in the 1970s committing her first. So you can't say flashbacks. They don't do it because they do. They've already done it. That's how they introduce this character. So we're going to find out what Konstantin's plan is. And I think it's going to be the biggest pile of bullshit love story. Stick with me. I think Konstantin has been robbing money off of the 12 to genuinely look after his family.
Yeah.
And his family is Carolyn, who is the mother of his dead son Kenny, right? Her daughter, because she's Carolyn's family and he needs to protect Carolyn's family. Villanelle, who he has always seen as a daughter, the daughter he really wanted. Irina, just because she is his daughter and he has to look after her. And Eve, because Villanelle is in love with Eve, and he's been doing all of this to take them all to Cuba. So however the nonsense story goes, it was all to help them all. I was doing this for all of you, and I had to, work with MI6 and the 12 and play them off each other to try and escape with this money to make a better life for all of you, so you could all be happy, right? That's the nonsense I think we'll probably get, right? But for whatever reason, because I can go on forever, I do think you're right. I think this is they've totally hinted, especially the last 3 episodes. It's been about Eve has no one. and Villanelle has no one, but they have each other. And the final scene of this episode where Villanelle calls her when she arrives in London. I've got a feeling we might even cut in the next episode and you see Villanelle stood directly in front of her on the phone. Anyway, I think the last thing we see and the final thing we see of season 3 will be Villanelle and Eve kissing, and then we cut to black, and then that's how the season ends. However we get to that point, I know I had a prediction of Nico being in it, and I still think Nico might be in it, but with the whole Konstantin, Dascha in the hospital, the whole Carolyn, and now Mo, and now Carolyn thinks she's under threat, and we've got this new assassin. I think Nico's out of the picture for the moment, I think. But I think a standoff is very likely, like you said. But I think the final moment of the season is going to be them kissing, and it is going to be that concept of you don't know whether, what happens from here? Where do we go from here? But I think that's the last thing we see. Villanelle, Eve, and their eyes are locked, and they kiss, and then boom, credits hit.
Right off into the sunset.
Yeah, that's how it.
Thelma and Louise style.
Where your theory kind of had them teaming up and turning into the A team. I just think that will be.
That was my personal. What I thought would be great.
Yeah, I think the final moment of the series is them two getting at least kissing. Knowing Killing Eve will start fucking series 4, and it'll be 4 years later, and it'll be Villanelle. I divorced my wife Eve. She was a bitch. You never know.
Well, listen, Brendan, we've warbled on enough now. We could probably warble on for another couple of hours, but unfortunately, I think our audience would tune out a lot earlier than before then.
It's been twice as long as our normal pods.
Well, yeah.
Like our Eve pod. I think it's because it's the anticipation for the last episode.
It is. The last episode is coming now, so we only have less than a week now. Well, just about a week, basically a week. Tune in to us if you've liked what we've been talking about. If you agree with Brendan's comments and you agree with mine, then give us a listen. Tune in, subscribe, hit the little notification bell on our YouTube channel, where we'll be talking.
Let us know if you disagree as well.
And let us know if you disagree as well, because we're all up for debates and we're all up for getting other people's opinions and dissecting them, because that's what we do. What we try and do. We could do it for hours, but then it would just become this rambling nonsense. So yes, we are inside your screen, inside your with the UR, because your was taken. So we had to just go with what we had on Twitter. And we're on SoundCloud, on iTunes. And we'll be releasing videos every week for the Killing Eve episodes when they come out. So thank you for listening to us, and we will be here for the final episode of Killing Eve Series 3, the finale, indeed.
It's a final countdown.
Doodly-dee, doodly-dee-dee.
Final countdown.
Inside your screen.